Rook and pawn endings are probably the most common endings that you will get in chess. The reason for this is that the rooks don't usually get developed that early in the game and only get developed quite late in the game. So they are often the pieces that you end up with when you're trying to, when you're in the endgame situation. Now, there are so many different rook and pawn endings and you can study them for forever. But there are two very, very key endgames that you need to know how to deal with. And they are the Lucena position and the Philidor position. Now, everyone who's on the winning side of things will always try to get to Lucena position, and the defender will always try to get to the Philidor position. And this is always with a rook and a pawn and a king versus just a rook and a king. Now, this position, the Lucena position, was named after a Spanish chess player who I believe was called Luis Ramirez de Lucena, and so it should be pronounced Lucena. But in England, a lot of the time it's pronounced Lucena position. So those of you who've heard it before most likely have heard of it. It's called the Lucena position. So I probably will call it Lucena so that you know what we're talking about. But its proper pronunciation is Lucena. Now, the way this works, I've got a typical Lucena position here on the board. If you to look at, this pawn is on the 7th rank and it's looking to promote in one move, but there are a few things that's stopping it. First of all, his own king is in the way, so he'd like to be able to move out the way. But two things on with that, the defending rook is cutting off one file, and the defending king is covering the other squares. So in order for you to be able to obtain a full point from this ending, you need to achieve a few things. First of all, you need to drive this king away so it's not so close to the attacking king. Therefore, once you've done that, you can then bring your king out so that it's in front, out of the way of the pawn. However, when you do this, you'll most likely be met with a series of checks from the king, from the rook. So you have to be able to shelter yourself. So the 3 stages to win this ending are drive the defending king away, bring your king out from in front of the pawn, and then shelter yourself from the checks. And in order to be able to do this, we have a very, very simple method. There are various ways that you can try and win this game. And most commonly, people try to play rook check here, which looks like it would, be a good move. But after, say, king f8, and then you try to play rook e8, then the king just comes back and you not really achieve anything by these moves. So there's usually a better way of dealing with it than just playing rook e7 check. And it's actually to do what we call building a bridge. What this means is that we bring our rook up to the 4th rank to provide a shelter for our king. It's in order to, as a preparation, folks, we know that black's way of defending is that he's going to consistently try and check. So first things first, I said I wanted to drive away the defending king. So we're going to do this by rook f1 check. After rook f1, the king needs to come over to the g file. Should it come to e6, this will make life a lot easier for us because now we can use the defending king as shelter from the checks ourselves, and we can just play king e8, and there's nothing stopping us from playing the d8 on the next go. So the black king doesn't usually do this, and usually just moves over to the g file here. Now, if I was to play king e7 immediately, I would get hit by checks, and I can't really do anything about it. Check. And now this is a skewer, so I have to keep in contact with this pawn. And I can't come forward anymore, because I will get skewered and I will lose the pawn. So unfortunately that doesn't work, and I can't just bring my king immediately forward. So after king g7, this is the moment where I would build a bridge and play rook to f4. What this does, it builds a bridge on the 4th rank. So I can then meet on black's checks now with a block. That doesn't really have anything better to do than to just keep his rook on their file. And now I could start playing my king forward, because after rook e1 check, I'll gradually bring my king forward, king d6, rook d1 check, making sure that I don't lose contact with this pawn. I play king e6, and then after rook e1, I bring my king forward yet again. Then after king d1, however, rook d1, however, yes, it is the skewer, but now I don't need to bring my king backwards to defend the pawn. I can interpose it with rook d4. Therefore, winning, because now the threat on the rook and also the threat of promoting cannot both be stopped at the same time. And I built the bridge, can block the check, and therefore this is a winning Lucena position. Now, it seems like this is just, one exact example. How often does this happen? But actually it does happen a lot. As I said, most of the time when you have one pawn left with a rook against no other pawns, and then this is the sort of position that you're aiming to get into. For example, let's take a position like this. This is a very normal sort of ending that you will get. But you can apply the things that you know about the Lucena position to this sort of position here. So with white's play, white has an absolutely great move. We mentioned previously that the king comes to life in the ending and is a very important piece and it's a very strong piece. So, and a very strong move would be to play rook f2, therefore cutting off the king and making sure that the king does not get into the game. Now, white's rook is completely blocked out and the king, but also is still flexible enough that it can come back into the game and attack or defend later on. But now, this pawn is just going to advance, and the black rook is left by himself to try and do all the defending, which you can't do because this king as well is supporting the pawn. Say, for example, after such moves as rook d8, then the king could come to c5, and it could try and be checked. But he could play rook d8, rook f4. Like I said, you can defend the pawn as well as still cutting off the king. The usual checks happen, can try to get the checks in the way, but it doesn't quite work. And now this rook is looking pretty awkward. It's to come back, and it's getting harassed. And now the pawn starts to advance, and you can see already that white is making progress. Again, the checks don't help, because now there are no checks, and you can't attack the pawn. So if the rook comes back on this file, these sort of typical moves are not necessarily finding the best ideas, but I mean, black can't just defend with one rook. All the time I'm just trying to play for white and just trying to get my king out the way so I can make the pawn progress. Check, perhaps. And then the king comes back after rook d1, d7. If I was to play this rook back to c1, you should recognize this position. So I just played the moves in order to get you here, but to see this is what we're aiming for. So now it's white's play, and we've reached Lucena position, but already we've done the first stage of driving the king away, so it's far enough away from the white king, and we've also built a bridge. So now we can play the typical Lucena and bring the king up afterwards. And if this rook tries to check, we've seen all this before, the white king will progress forwards, d4. It's a bridge to interpose. So the Lucena position is a very important position and does occur in endgames as you've seen here. So it's definitely worth knowing and recognizing that you can get to that position and learning how to build the bridge and stop the defending checks. The Philidor position is the other essential rook and pawn ending that you must know. We just looked at Lucena position, which is the one which is an advantage for the person with the rook and pawn, and should be a win if you know how to do the technique and you know how to build a bridge. This rook and pawn versus rook is a draw, and you need to learn how to do the drawing technique. So the position on the board here is a classic Philidor position. And there are several ways to play this, but Philidor was a French player in the 18th century who used to study these endings, and so this ending has been associated with his name. He used to analyze this ending over and over again and found a very easy way to be able to draw. It's also known as a third rank defense, purely because that's exactly what the technique is all about. The best way to be able to draw this ending is to play rook h6 here. The idea is that it tries to stop white progressing. His king cannot cross this line because the black rook is providing a barrier for the king. I must look at other alternatives though just to show you why they don't quite work. So, for example, if I was to play a more passive move such as rook f7 and try to just stay on that rank and not do anything drastic just to hope that white cannot push through, then white has this swinging rook idea where he swings it over to the other side of the board in order to aim to play rook a7. And once he plays rook a7, he can then force the king onto the back rank and make progress with his pieces. So, unfortunately, that doesn't quite work. You don't want to have a passive rook in this ending. You want to be able to keep your rook active. And once the pieces have been knocked to the back rank, then the rook will become passive and then it will be a loss for black. The other idea is to put your rook active as possible straight away and play rook h1. Now, this is maybe a lot trickier. For example, after rook g7, king e8, and say king d6, which is quite a strong idea. The idea is that if you play king e6 straight away, then black can come back with rook h6. But the idea is after king d6, after rook h6, white can then block this with e6, making progress and threatening checkmate in one move at the moment. So after king d6, this now becomes a bit trickier. Now, this ending is actually drawn, but it's a lot more complicated, and we'll go into that at a later time. Now, for example, a lot of people try to come back now with rook h8, but you can see the swinging rook idea of rook a7 just wins on the spot, so unfortunately that doesn't work either. So we try to avoid that line, and we just show you the easiest idea is to play rook h6 and build this third rank defense. It's much, much simpler. For example, if white tries to play rook g7 and king e8, and then swing his rook across again, all you need to do is stay on the third rank. It's as simple as that. Even though it looks like they've pushed your king all the way back, your rook is now much more active on this square and is doing a much better job by cutting off the king and the pawn. So after rook g6, it's just holding on that rank. There's nothing that white can do to improve his position now. He wants to be able to advance with his king, but he can't. So the only thing and his rook can't, and they're putting a better position. So the only thing he can do is to push his pawn to progress. But this is bad now, because the pawn on e5 could have been used as shelter. As you saw earlier, if they brought the rook down to the first rank and tried to keep checking, then the king could hide behind the pawn. But once this pawn has been pushed to e6, now, and only now, you play rook g1, you go down to the first rank, and you start checking from behind. There's absolutely nothing that white can do to stop that. Now, rook a8 isn't going to help it anymore, because after king e7, this white king still can't progress. You haven't got any other favourable checks with the rook, so you might as well just come back. The other try that white has is to play rook a4, hoping that he can block your checks, but it doesn't really help, because after rook d4, black can simply just take this, and this is a drawn king and pawn ending, as we have seen from previous chapters. So, this is the Philidor's position, very famous, and rook and pawn ending. The Lucena and the Philidor's are the most famous rook and pawn endings and the most essential. Pretty much every rook and pawn ending will come down to one of these options. If you have the pawn, you're aiming for the Lucena. If you don't have the pawn, you have the defending rook and king, then you are aiming for the Philidor. So please remember these techniques, and they are the easiest way to win. As I said in the Lucena, it might not be the only way to, but it's the easiest way, it's the most simple way. And again, with the Philidors, this is the easiest way to obtain a draw without any effort. So please remember the third rank defense and see if you can utilize it in your endgames.
Thank you for watching the video. Don't forget to give us a like and subscribe.